This is day 2 of my plyometric experiment for hand strength and grip strength training. First off, I want to say that I don't recommend anybody else try this because this is an experiment I'm doing on my own body because there's a very high risk of injury, and I already know that experiencing it from the first day and how my hands feel today. But from the research I've been doing, plyometrics are an amazing way to increase tendon stiffness, density, and the relationship between your tendons and your muscles through explosive high-risk training. So basically the setup is a landmine attachment, which is a barbell that kind of levers itself against the wall with a bunch of different hand grips attached to the landmine with a platform that I can rest my palms on so I can just explicitly use my forearms and my finger tendons to do this plyometric training. I'll grab onto whatever it is that I'm going to be using for my grip training. Right now, because of how sore my hands are, I'm only going to use the bars. So I'll pull them up. I have it leveled out and spaced out the way that works for my hands. And I will just pulse the weight onto my tendons and try to get a full stretch, for the most part, onto my tendons. And I'll just do this over and over. Because right now I don't have a real rep scheme in mind. I'm trying to use lighter weight to lower the risk of tendon injury. And I can feel it in my forearms, through my tendons, all the way up to my fingertips, especially if I use like the eagle loops, which are just fingertips, where you stick your hands into these little loops that are kind of ergonomic for your fingers. And if you put just your fingertips in there and you rest your palms on here, you just plyometrically engage, lengthen your fingers, and pull your hands up at the same time. And that doesn't hurt. But again, this is day 2. I did this yesterday. I did about 80 to 100 reps of this exercise. I went a little heavier, and I think that's what caused a little bit of the inflammation. But in my ring finger and my pointer finger on my right hand, my A2 pulley, which is the lowest pulley on your hand, before it gets into your palm, those 2 pulleys are extremely inflamed. Like I went to the rock climbing gym, and it's not like I heard a pop or anything, because I've had tendon injuries in the past. I didn't hear a pop. I felt it in my fingers right in that spot as I was using this. I felt the stress in that spot, and I'm kind of just fighting through that because sure, we don't want to cause too much stress and rupture a tendon. But what I am thinking about through the studies I've been looking at is you are going to experience a little bit of degeneration in your tendons because they're going to go through a phase of recovery and come back even stronger, even stiffer, and actually increase in density and size. That's the idea anyway. As I get more into this, I'm going to develop like specific weight training, periodization. So it's like I'll use a certain weight for a certain amount of reps in different positions. So this was more of an open hand, let my hands completely open and come to an almost fully closed position, but very violent, quick movements, because that plyometrics of the 3 phases are eccentric, the amortization phase, which is basically the rebound phase. You go into an isometric to overcome that force that's going into your hands, and then go into the concentric phase and kind of ride that up. And that's what I'm aiming for with the plyometrics and the hand strength training. Again, I don't know if this is going to yield any positive results, but right now I can tell you from one training session, my hands and my whole forearm are extremely fatigued, sore, and inflamed. And I don't know if it's because of the certain stress that I'm putting on my hands, I mean, obviously, but the certain rep scheme, the certain amount of weight, whatever the case is, this is trial 1. I'm just trying to see how much stronger I can get my hands in 6 to 8 months, and this is just a documentation of what I'm going to be doing. This is going to be my primary grip strength training exercise for tendon density and strength. I'm still going to do traditional like wrist curls, wrist extensions, and everything else I've already been doing for grip strength, but this is going to be thrown into right now about 3 days a week. It's pretty interesting because as I'm doing this, I don't feel any pain when I am doing the movement. Like, it doesn't feel bad. It feels like it's definitely stressing my forearms and my tendons, but it doesn't hurt in the A2 pulleys that I know are inflamed, because they hurt to the touch. Like, if you've ever climbed rocks before and you felt soreness in your hands, you might have had an A2 pulley strain where it just becomes inflamed, and you let it rest for a little while and slowly goes away. I actually had that in my middle finger from a rock climbing competition that I did back in August in 2023. And so very similar A2 pulley strain, but that's fully healed now. My middle finger is good. I have multiple grips I'm going to be trying, because I am actually trying to increase my closed strength, so my actual hand grip strength. I'm using a dynameter. I'm going to try to come up with a pretty consistent routine to test that. I want to test it like once in the morning and once in the afternoon, because your grip strength is usually weaker when you wake up in the morning, because it's so connected to your central nervous system that you have to be fully awake and fully engaged and really warmed up, but not too fatigued in order to get the best results on a dynameter. But yeah, this is just an experiment that I'm doing with my hands to see how much stronger I can get my tendons. And I want to put it out there that this is extremely risky. I mean, even from one day of doing this, if you go too heavy, it's incredibly easy to rupture a tendon in your finger. But I find it really interesting, and I've done a lot of isometric training on a hangboard. I've done, just grip strength manipulation, made my own tools. Y'all have seen that sort of stuff. But I want to test the absolute riskiest way to get your tendons as strong as possible. And I've done enough research in plyometrics to know that they do yield results and we talked about it earlier, the Achilles tendon, they did a cross-section analysis to see how much power output and tendon density and stiffness, because they're saying that the stiffer your tendons are, the more force you can produce, because less energy is wasted. When your tendons are really elastic and able to be loose and move a lot, you lose a lot of energy and a lot of power output, because you're not able to resist and contract, because your muscles connect to the tendons, which connect to the bone. And if you lose energy within that connection, then obviously you produce less power. So the stiffer and stronger your tendons are, obviously you don't want them to be too stiff, because I still want to be able to open my hands, but you want them to be rigid, tough, and resilient, and not wasting energy. And I've noticed my open hand crimp compared to other strong rock climbers that I climb with, my open hand is just not even comparable. I mean, it's strong. It's definitely above average, but some of these V13 climbers that I train with, their open hand strength, they're lifting up 220% body weight. And I can't even come close to that. I do basically just body weight on a 20 millimeter ledge. And so this is kind of just testing a theory. I have a theory that plyometrics can, even though they're risky, and all the research says they're riskier than doing isometrics, because isometrics are a great way to train, and traditional, just flexion extension, traditional exercises are a great way to train, but there is enough research that shows me that plyometrics and putting your hand all the way through those phases in a controlled manner, at least as controlled as possible, yield stronger tendons and better power output. So this is day 2 of how I'm feeling. I'm not going to do the exercises today. I just wanted to explain what I'm doing, and I didn't make a video yesterday. But this is day 2. I'm going to be doing this about maybe 2 to 3 days a week, because I don't want to overload my tendons, because the last thing I need is my tendon actually rupturing. But I think putting my tendons through a nice amount of stress will yield some pretty interesting results. Don't know if they're going to be positive, but right now I am a pretty solid V8 climber, I'll say, in the gym. So it's all arbitrary. It doesn't really mean anything. We'll say I climb V7 outside. So we'll see. 6 to 8 months from now, I'm going to document this whole process to see if this particular strength training in my fingers outplays, because I've done so many other variations of training and I've gotten injured pretty much the same way. Max loading, one arm dead hangs on a hangboard, that sort of stuff. in an isometric fashion, and it's still, that's almost like eccentric overload, which is something else I tried as well, which is I would load up my hand with two hands, hold on to a 20 millimeter ledge, let go with my other hand, and hold on as long as I could until my hand opened up to an uncomfortable spot and I dropped the weight. And even that didn't really yield too many results. Maybe I didn't do it too long, but also it's a super boring way to train. Plyometrics is kind of a lot more fun, and I feel it. Like I feel it all the way down my forearms, on the top and on the bottom. So day one, I'll keep you all posted on how this is going. I'll find different ways to measure my strength besides the dynameter, because that's going to be a really cool thing to actually monitor and track the progress. And it also goes on how much recovery time. So I'll be talking about that as well, because right now I'll probably need like 3 or 4 days of recovery. So I'll probably do this again one time this week and then see how I recover, kind of document like how long it takes me to recover and how comfortable I feel. But it's also interesting that if I crimp on something, so, you know, open hand or even closed hand crimp, that's where the pain comes in my A2 pulleys. Left hand's good. I can full crimp on that. But when I was climbing yesterday, I only went up to V5 because I didn't want to push too hard on my own body weight, especially when this is the first iteration of battering my tendons as hard as I can. But I'll try to find a measuring scale, especially maybe like some board climbing, like using the moon board. If y'all have any recommendations of some strength tests that I can do, I probably should have done those before I did this first iteration of training, but I was too excited when I set this up to set up all the way I'm gonna measure it. But this is just gonna be a journey, a process, and seeing if it yields cool results, because there's really no research in the hand plyometric area. And I'm super interested, and I'm using my own body. So if I wreck my own body, then, you know, nobody loses, but I'm gonna be the guinea pig. If it does yield good results, I'll try to come up with some safer methods of doing this. Well, we'll see. I don't really know how it's gonna go. I have some modifications I'm gonna make to this that'll make it a little more comfy for my hands, especially when I'm using the bar, because as you can see from the different grips, I have some monos, I have some extensors. So like when I do extensors on here and I'm pulling my wrists up, this bar, especially when you have a decent amount of weight on here, it's kind of painful on here. So I'm gonna put some grips to soften up this and then wrap it with some rubber, silicone rubber wraps, just so it keeps the friction there. But other than that, we'll see how much my tendons improve or not improve. So stay tuned.